Hey friend, in this video, we are going to test your skill level for watercolor going from easy to hard. So if you're wondering where you land with your skill level with watercolor, or maybe you're wondering how to take it up a notch in your watercolor land of talents, then this video is going to show you how to incorporate or how to develop your skills over time and what easy, intermediate, and more difficult or hard loose style watercolor florals should look like. What techniques they involve, what kind of color mixing, depth, etc., all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested and want to learn more, then let's dive in. Okay, so for the first painting, we're just going to be basically painting the basic shape of the flower using very simple strokes. So for a filbert brush, I'm just kind of lightly, with a 35-degree hold, lightly dragging my brush down in a C curve. And then I might use just the corner or the tip of the brush for another C curve here. And then you can flip the brush from being on its belly to on its side with some medium pressure and give it some spikes like that, or just one spike. And so we're just basically creating the shape of the flower with one solid color, this color being quinacridone red from my Mary Blue. Just recently learned how to say that color. So now let's do one with a round brush. I'm gonna use the same base color, the quinacridone red, and then some pyrrole red, just to be slightly different. And to get this kind of round teardrop shape with the round brush, I'm just going to start with the tip of the brush in a 35-degree angle and kind of outline the shape and use medium pressure to guide it in. And then we can use the point of the brush for those thin little shapes. And then I might fill out some of these like so. So just some basic shapes using 25 to 35-degree hold, maybe do a little swirl and then point at the base, C curve, and just little marks of petals. So this would be the most basic or simple starting way to paint loose style flowers. We've got basically just the shape with one solid color. We're not going to get too fancy with wet and wet color. I'm going to paint in my stem as a C curve. Kind of just use the side of my brush and go up and down for my leaves. So if you're a beginner, you should be able to be somewhere around here with your loose style florals. Obviously, this bud right here is the more complicated shape because there's a few more marks than this first one. The first one is basically just two loops or upside down teardrop shapes with a couple C curves. And then this one has a little bit more to it, and then this one has a little bit more. But all I'm doing for my leaves is just basically going up and down. Nothing too complicated. And I'm changing up the hue of my flowers and the hue of my leaves just slightly. So there's a couple leaves that are more yellow, and then a couple of these flowers are more pink than red. And for structure or composition, think about following a C curve for a single branch like that. So do your flowers first, and then you're plugging in your stem and your leaves and kind of framing it. So if it's kind of beginner level for you and you're still getting frustrated with the shape of the flower, then just paint one flower over and over and over again until you start to see that forming. But all of the petals are pointing towards that middle spot where the stem would connect, and you're basically creating a V shape with these flowers or petals. So the next step up would be a two-tone wet and wet loose style flower. So I'm going to do just one over here with a couple leaves and such in the middle of my painting. Same colors, but we're going to start with a really light kind of washy version first. And I'm using my filbert brush, and I'll do another one, I guess, with the round brush so you can see. But I'm basically starting with a light kind of rectangle shape, and maybe using the side of my brush for a couple of those. And then I might bring out a wider C curve on the sides and on the bottom here. So the whole area is wet. There's no white space in between the petals. I'm just kind of getting the overall like silhouette of the flower with water first, or a light pink. And I might kind of use the corner of my filbert brush and bring it up here and leave that gap of white space there. So then from here, I'm going to grab a buttery consistency, so a thick consistency of a pinky red color. And I'm just going to go on the edge of some of these petals and let that bleed. So this is called wet and wet. I'm just going to grab some of that and let it bleed. And some of this swirling that's happening, I don't like, so this is called lifting. So we're incorporating a couple more techniques in this second painting to test your skill level on working quickly and noticing marks that you maybe don't want and lifting them, or seeing where you can add more depth. So I can add a little bit more depth in here with maybe some more red. And then maybe we start to carve in just the basics of a couple petals right in there. But that's all we're gonna do with our detail. We're not gonna get too detailed, and you can keep accentuating some of those dark moments. There. So it's got a nice gradient, and here's what it would look like if we did the round brush. I'm gonna do one kind of pointing this way. But you're getting these shapes with just swirling your brush around kind of in a circle or an upside down teardrop. So doing another one over here. So we've kind of got like a heart shape, and then using the tip of the brush and pulling it in, another upside down teardrop there and there. And then adding butter color. Like so. And then lifting up some of that color to soften in the middle to make these saturated colors kind of mostly towards the edge or the tops of the petals. And then we'll grab some more and accentuate some of these curves with more red or more pink. And then lifting color to soften. And then I'm going to show you some other fun leaves with a filbert brush. Actually, let's get a little bit darker with okay, and then got some sap green. We've got this petal's pointing this way, so we're going to pull out our stem in a C curve here. I'm just using the corner of my brush and dragging it down. So this one's coming in here. Getting some lighter values of green with more water. And then we've got some good yellow greens in dark and light values. So now I'm going to add in some more blue green. As little accents on some of these leaves. So we've got one hue and value, two hues and values, and now we're going to step it up even more on our third one and make it a little bit more complicated with 3 layers or values. As you can see, the second version is very loose still. It's very like interesting to look at, and you can start to see that the painter, the person painting, was trying to pull out some rows of petals here in the middle. So here it's more flat. This is a little bit more 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, whatever. Okay, so next we're basically gonna do this, but then once it dries, we're gonna add more layers to it. So I'm just gonna do 1 flower. You already know how to use a round brush if you only have round brushes. So it's gonna be the same as what I showed here. I'm just gonna do 1 flower for this. And my preferred brush now for flowers is a filbert brush. So I'm gonna start with the middle of the flower. And everything's gonna be very wet, kind of using the side of my brush for these C curves, and then the tip of my brush and pointing in for more petals. So this one has a little bit more white space, but we're gonna accentuate that white space with darker colors once that dries. So then I'm gonna go in and I'm actually gonna do a little bit of a brownish purple. On this right side, because some of your highlights will have shadow in them. So starting to swoop or kind of sweep across those C curves. And then build on top of that. So we've already got 3 colors here that we've used. The light pink, the purpley gray, and now a darker pink to pull out the separation between each petal. And I want to show that this is a little petal and then this petal is behind it. So I'm going to darken this one. And if you don't want your color to spread too much, then you want to make sure that your consistency is mostly pigment with just a little bit of water. It's going to spread a lot more aggressively the more water you have in your mixture. So now I'm going in and kind of carving out other little petals. And I'll do even more once this dries. So wet and wet for just this one for a little bit more of a complicated look. And then this one's gonna be wet and wet and wet and dry. But before it dries, I'm just gonna touch in some yellow with primary yellow and yellow ochre towards where the stamen would be, just for a little bit of a glow. And then for my stems, I'm gonna start with just water, touch of that green. And I'll go over that too once it dries. Okay, so now that this layer is dry, we are going to be painting wet and dry with our darkest, thickest color. So I'm grabbing a thick amount of this pink and some red. And I might add in this, just a touch of this purple color that I've had mixed up. And some dragon's blood. Because why not? It has all the right undertones I want. Some red, some brown. And then I'm gonna do what I like to call carving. So this is how you make those loose flowers really pop and look more realistic, is by kind of grabbing your shadow color that you already have, or your midtone color, and then just kind of carving out some more detail. Just kind of grabbing the top edge of some of that shadow color and bringing it down to show separation between some of these light and dark colors. So just grabbing that top edge and pulling out some detail and making those rows of petals kind of separate and pop. And then do the same thing with the green, just a little touch. So obviously this is not just a development of skill to get to this more complicated level, but it's really mostly a development of patience because it takes a lot longer to add detail. The skill is mostly with your eye and seeing where to carve out each row of petals. The more you practice it, the easier it becomes and the more you're able to see where that goes, and it's really mostly a practice in patience. There you go. So with each of these 3 paintings, this is a good test of where you're at skill level wise with painting flowers. But at the same time, you want to keep in mind that a lot of times more beginner level people don't reach the next stages of more intermediate or more advanced loose style flowers because of the time and the patience that it takes. So a lot of times people get really frustrated because they think it should be quick and easy, but it really does take just a lot more time. This does require a bit more skill, but all you have to do is daily practices that just take the edge up on your skill level with the challenge each day so that you can start building. So if you're able to do this more wet and wet two-tone version, then I would say you're in the more intermediate range. If you're still a beginner and you're still even struggling with the shape of the flower, that is completely normal. So just because you can't get the shape right doesn't mean that you're below beginner. There's no such thing. It does take some skill to understand how to shape the flower, but just start with a V shape and then continue to fluff it up with these extra C curves. And then from there, you're getting the same exact flowers, just a little bit bigger, and you're starting light and punching in darker color for more two-tone. And then this one is obviously the most detailed. There's 3 to 4 ranges of depth with color and shadow. And you're basically kind of just carving out the flower with wet and dry. So we used wet and wet for this one, wet and wet, and wet and dry. So a lot more time, a lot more patience, and a little bit more skill level to see where you're at with your painting skills. There you go. I hope that was helpful and informative for you. If you're feeling a little discouraged after watching that, just keep in mind that dedicating yourself over and over and over again to repetitive action is what brings the skill out of art. So you all have that within you. You're all creative. You all have that art within you, but you need to put in that dedicated time and repetitive action to bring out the skill and the talent. So keep at it. Keep working your way up, keep edging yourself up with that skill. And if you want to take it even further, we have the Complete Beginner's Guide to Watercolor on this channel. That is basically a 2-hour in-depth watercolor video on all the techniques, all the things you would need to know about watercolor. So make sure you check out that free video. And if you want to take it a little bit further, go to my Patreon, jennaraney.com/Patreon. It's basically an art school. So I have twice a month, we're releasing exclusive to Patreon only monthly tutorials, and then a live art class, a live Q&A with me. And then it also comes with a community where we're all interacting with each other, asking questions, giving feedback. And it's a great place to just have a monthly accountability and to take your art even further. And then also I have an online course called The Art Within that is going to help you understand all of the foundations that you need to know with sketching, with watercolor, color theory, composition, and how to develop your style and the repetitive action that you need to unlock this place called flow state that's going to help you heal and get into this theta brainwave state and do all these fun flowy things in your brain, which I talk about the neuroscience really in depth in the course. But it's also going to help you develop your own style and find the joy and life and breathe life back into your art practice and become more independent with it, so you don't have to rely on things like tutorials, even though they're awesome, or you know, grabbing the art within and excavating, cultivating it in your world outside. So go to jennaraney.com/the-art-within to check out my online course on that. It covers a whole range of topics. It's really awesome. Check it out. And as always, thank you so much for watching these videos, for liking these videos, for subscribing to our channel. All of it is super helpful and helps us get these videos out to the world. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.